It is a day for us to celebrate today, and a day where we can just take a moment to pause and not only think about, as we did on Friday, we spent some time talking about what the cross meant for us. And then if you were able to yesterday, we did a small reflection on Saturday, which was Silent Saturday. And in the midst of that silence, even in our silence, we hear lots of white noise, lots of things and distractions. But I would imagine that for those people gathered around the cross on that day, who then were sort of wondering what had happened, the confusion that was building around that, not because it was like a drastic turn of events, because it was forecast. Jesus said this would happen. But in our understanding, we don't understand why some things happen. It becomes overwhelming for us. It becomes a significant challenge for us to try to work out if God is in this, then why that? Because isn't following Jesus and serving God all about all the good things? No, it's not. It's actually about that in the midst of those things, that a reminder that God is with us. You know, I've been thinking a little bit about this story that we say Jesus is alive, which is wonderful, you know, and that we should celebrate that. But actually the message of Easter is that Jesus has risen. Yes, he is alive. There's lots of people who were dead you think about Lazarus. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. You know why you can't talk to Lazarus anymore? Because he died again. Jesus will not die again. This is the story. This is the good news of Easter, that Jesus, once and for all, it was done. This price has been paid. He has been resurrected to new life. So therefore, he has been resurrected to new life. Therefore, we have been resurrected to new life. Who wants a new life? That was life, not wife, right? Who wants a new life? Is she looking? I said this on Friday, I'll say it again. We took this road journey down with the donkey at the beginning of Holy Week, which we call Palm Sunday, where that same road became something from the donkey to a divine moment. Same road. We then went to the table, and Dean led us in a really great kind of sharing around what this means for us to go from a cup to the covenant, the promise that God has for us. Then we went from sadness to silence on Easter, on Saturday. And some of us maybe paused on that day. Then we looked at the cross on Good Friday, but the scoffers and the watchers, those that stood around the cross, recognizing that we come to the cross from so many different angles. And then today is about resurrection, which is about new life, which is also about taking us, even in our own stories right now, from turmoil to triumph. Turmoil to triumph. Think about those that were at the cross that day. They went to the tomb, as was read to us by Rhonda. They went to the tomb, and guess what? He was not there. Do you go, oh, there's the triumph? Not yet. Because in that moment, the turmoil just got even a little bit more turmoily. There you go. You're welcome. But it was a promise because it is the whole story. I shared yesterday in our reflection that if you like to watch movies, and I'm guilty of this, I like to watch the same movie over and over again because I know how the movie ends. I like the good bits. I can fast forward that. Oh, it's a bit of tension. Get rid of that. We'll go to the good bit. Am I the only person who does that? Honestly, you're not telling the truth, right? There is something about recognizing that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is part of the story, the whole story. Because the cross for us is a symbol of death and destruction and perhaps sacrifice and this notion of once and for all. But on the other side of this cross, on the other side of the tomb, is where the triumph really begins to take hold for us. Recognizing that it's not just that's weird. No one was expecting that. Jesus said that this would happen. And Jesus keeps his word. The road to Emmaus, after the verses that was read to us just before, says this. Now the same day, two of them were going down to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. And as they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him. Why? To keep him in the turmoil? For the big reveal? Because he said to them, what are you discussing? What are you talking about? And they talk about, well, have you not heard? Are you the only person who hasn't heard? And the conversations for us can evolve around this pattern or this cycle of just telling the same old story about all that. Have you not heard? Have you not heard about the turmoil? Have you not heard about the turmoil? And this idea or this belief that we can cross over from something to another is that we go from the turmoil and we start to live in the triumph, that which is the risen Christ in us. That's the new life. That's the promise. That's what we all desire. And it matters to us. It's important to us. In fact, if you read through the book of Acts, you will see constantly that they don't talk about Jesus dying on the cross. They don't talk about the suffering necessarily. They don't talk about hell. What they talk about is the resurrection. Because it is a symbol constantly. I think it's in every chapter. Don't quote me on that. And if you're a Bible scholar, do it privately later on. But there is something about this in which Jesus often talked about and others talked about. Not that, if you don't do this, you don't do that. It was always about the story that there is triumph over the turmoil. There is something good is coming. And Jesus said, I'm coming and I'm coming back. I will do it. And we have to believe that he's done it. That the Son of God will suffer at the hands of others, but on the third day he will rise again. That's why we need the whole story. The whole story. It's easy for us to get to the cross and say, it's gruesome, it's terrible. But actually there's a part of this that we need to fully grasp. It's not a sequel. It's not part one. If you want to come back for part two, it is the overarching story, this redemption story for us. Our faith is built on the whole story, not on parts of it. So the question for us then is, if we can think about what is the turmoil, perhaps in our own lives, and we can think about the turmoil in our world, which is quite significant at the moment, how do we live beyond the turmoil and move into the triumph? If we think about the heartache that we would experience, the disappointments that we experience, perhaps it's the silence that we experience. How do we move beyond that? How do we cross over into this new life? There's a song that we sing sometimes, Graves into Gardens. He takes that which is dead and he gives it new life. We don't do it anymore because our kids are a bit older, but we used to love doing these driving holidays. First box it ticked, cheap. My job, which I think was probably the most significant job of the whole thing, not organising and planning and all that sort of stuff. Anyone can do that, right? The job that I had was to pack the car. Now, if you've ever been on a holiday where you need to pack a car, I would often stand there and I'd think, how big do they think this boot is? Right? And all these bags had come out, and I'm in the process of while this is happening, I'm thinking, you don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that. Now, I also know, I'm smart enough to know, I just think that now, I don't say that, right? My job is to turn this boot into the world's biggest Tetris, right? And I get all this stuff in, and I know that there's stuff that I am packing, that I am painstakingly trying to shove into this boot that will never, ever get used. But it doesn't matter. Just in case. Like literally a case of stuff, just in case. And I think about the other side of this cross for ourselves. And I think about the baggage that we will carry or the turmoil that we will hold on to just in case. Just in case I need it. The scriptures tell us that the women brought spices to the tomb. And we read very quickly that they get there and there's no need for the spices. And then the women go to the 11 and they say, they didn't believe what they were saying. The women were sharing with the 11 saying, this is what's happened, this is what we've seen. And Peter says, that's interesting. Peter gets up and he runs to the tomb to check out what had happened for himself. So he goes back to the tomb. So remember, Jesus said many, many times, I'm going, but I'm coming back. And even in the midst of that conversation, Peter says, just you guys wait here, I'm going to go back. My question to you is this, it's very simple. How often do we go back to the tomb instead of going into the new life? Isn't it easier to go to that which is dead? The story that just mounts and piles on? Instead of us leaving those things at the foot of the cross, emptying our bags, putting aside the just in case, and saying that I experienced a new life in which Jesus has given to me. We have to think about that which we take into this new reality with us and ask ourselves this question: what do I hold, what do I carry that I no longer require? There is something about going back to that old story. There is something about putting a sign above our heads. Yes, but did you know what happened to me? Did you know what I have done? I think this Easter, the greatest thing that we can do is to not be a Peter and go racing back to the tomb to check, but to experience it. I'm no psychologist, that might shock you, I know. But our ability to recall and remember bad things is pretty good. Pretty good. And in fact, sometimes we can remember those things in great detail. It's called negative bias. It's a survival mechanism, because we can survive and thrive on negative stories. Helps us to avoid some reality, helps us to avoid future threats, because we carry in our bags this which we should have left behind. Our ability to remember what Jesus has said and done for us is difficult. He says, into the hands of men who are sinners, he will go. Check. And I'll be crucified. Check. And on the third day, I will rise. Okay. Why can we check the first two boxes so quickly, and yet we struggle to realise that on the third day, when he said he will rise again, he meant it? You know, I said before, the negative stuff for us is sometimes easy to recall, and it's a time for us to remember. But here's what we remember today. On the third day, today, we celebrate. On the third day, I will rise again. On the third day, you will rise again. When you recognise who Jesus is for you, you will rise again. Jesus said a number of times, he reminded people of this prediction. He'll be rejected by the leading priests and the teachers of the religious law, the scoffers and the watchers who stood at the cross, but he will rise again. Earlier on in Luke's Gospel, he says, listen to me and remember what I say. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of his enemies, but they didn't know what he meant. Its significance was hidden from them, so they couldn't understand it, and they were afraid to ask him about it. Talking to the 12 disciples, Jesus said, listen, we're going up to Jerusalem, where all the predictions of the prophets concerning the Son of Man will come true. He will be handed over to the Romans, he will be mocked, treated shamefully and spat upon. They will flog him and whip him and kill him. But that is not the end of the story. Because again, he says, on the third day, I will rise again. Jesus doesn't say all these things to remind them. Doesn't remind them that it's just about the resurrection, that I am alive. He reminds them, he says, I am the resurrection in John's Gospel. I am the resurrection and the life. Martin Luther says the cross is the victory, the resurrection is the triumph. The resurrection is a public display of the victory, the triumph of the crucified one. I played basketball on Monday night. Yeah, it was pretty fast on the court. We didn't have a victory. I know that might shock some of you. But you know when you win a game, and for a short time you can claim a victory. And I would have, but I couldn't. And there's some emotion in a victory. Like the last record says that you won, but we'll get a rematch later on and we can play again and whatever. That's how the world sort of goes. But in actual fact, for us, we don't think about the cross and the resurrection as a victory, because there is no rematch. What we think about is the triumph. Triumph over adversity, triumph over complexity, triumph over our lives. Because he is the resurrection and the life. As we think about in these next few moments, what does it mean for us to reset? Not reset ourselves on this side of the cross, but actually reset ourselves beyond the cross, beyond the resurrection, in this new life. What decisions do we need to make? What baggage do we unpack? What stories do we leave behind? How do we break this cycle and experience the new life? You know, you've got to be brave to do that, because you're actually now not trusting yourself. You're putting your hope and your trust in Jesus Christ. The life, the resurrection, and the power and the might that comes with that. If you could reimagine what that could look like for yourselves today. If you could repurpose the story, recognizing the triumph over the silence, or the triumph over the sadness or the turmoil, whatever it would be for you. That the new life that we get to experience today is not just for today. It is new life. It doesn't say, and you will experience a new day. It is a new life. The resurrection and the people going to the tomb, the women going to the tomb in preparation to see Jesus and to sort of take care of the body, all that changed in a moment. And they went to tell this story as far and wide as they could. And it fell on different ears. Some believed them, some didn't. Some needed to go back and check, Peter. But the story moved on. My hope for you today, as we celebrate this Resurrection Sunday, not that you would just move on, but actually that you would leave it behind. Because you know how hard it is to pack that boot and pack that car and pack those bags of all the stuff that you no longer need. And you can let it go. That's the gift that Jesus offers us through the cross, through the tomb, you.